declaration that shakes the world. On September 2nd, 2025, in the northern port city of Tianjin, Presidents Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping declared that China-Russia relations had reached an unprecedented level. The words echoed through diplomatic circles worldwide. For some, it was a warning. For others, it was reassurance. For Beijing and Moscow, it was a moment of triumph, proof that their strategic alignment had not only survived turbulent years, but reached a new, historic peak. This was not a casual statement. It came against a backdrop of shifting global power, the lingering effects of the Ukraine war, Western sanctions, and U.S. protectionism under Donald Trump's second administration. For two neighbors that have often eyed each other warily across centuries, the journey from post-Cold War pragmatism to today's no-limits partnership is nothing short of remarkable. As Xi reminded the world back in 2023, changes, the likes of which we haven't seen for 100 years, and we are the ones driving these changes together. At the recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit in Tianjin, the optics told the story as much as the words. The two leaders held a bilateral meeting on the sidelines, and Putin attended a military parade in Beijing commemorating the 81st anniversary of the end of World War II, an unmistakable symbol of unity. Their remarks were equally striking. Our close communication reflects the strategic nature of Russian-Chinese ties, which are currently at an unprecedented level, Putin told Xi. Xi's response was equally confident. China-Russia relations have withstood the test of international changes. These comments were not isolated sound bites, but the latest chapter in a crescendo that began with the 2022 No Limits Partnership Declaration and Xi's sweeping 2023 statement about shared global transformation. Beneath the rhetoric lies economic reality. In 2024, bilateral trade hit a record $245 billion, driven by energy, vehicles, and machinery. Yet the first half of 2025 saw an 8.1% year-on-year downturn, as Russian imports of Chinese vehicles slowed and oil exports to China dipped. The composition of trade highlights the asymmetry. Russia exports raw materials. Fossil fuels accounted for 73% of exports in 2023, while China dominates with technology-intensive goods. Vehicle exports alone surged fivefold in 2023, underscoring how sanctions pushed Russia toward dependence on Chinese industrial output. Energy remains the backbone. The Eastern Siberia Pacific Ocean (ESPO) pipeline, built with a $25 billion Chinese loan, stands as a success story. But the lack of agreement on the long-discussed Power of Siberia 2 pipeline is a reminder that even unlimited partnerships face limits. Joint military drills between Chinese and Russian forces are now routine and increasingly sophisticated. Russia, cut off from Western suppliers, leans on China for critical components, while Beijing benefits from access to advanced Russian missile and air defense systems. Even in space, the two sides are converging. Cooperation between China's Beidou and Russia's GLONASS satellite systems, alongside joint lunar exploration projects, illustrates a deepening high-tech bond, once unimaginable during the Cold War. On the world stage, Beijing and Moscow act as a diplomatic shield for each other. At the UN Security Council, they veto resolutions targeting one another, and jointly promote the rhetoric of a multipolar world and a just and reasonable global governance system. This unity extends to the information domain. Chinese media has amplified Russian narratives on the Ukraine war, while Russian outlets echo Beijing's positions on Taiwan and the South China Sea. Sanctions accelerated the push for alternatives to Western finance. Russia's SPFS system is increasingly linked with China's CIPS platform, reducing reliance on SWIFT. In multilateral forums like BRICS and the SCO, both powers push for institutions that dilute Western dominance. At the recent SCO summit, the presence of leaders from India, China, and Russia in a visibly warm setting projected exactly the image they sought: a cohesive bloc charting a course apart from Western influence. The immediate effects of the China-Russia partnership are already visible on the global stage. First, it directly challenges U.S. primacy. Western strategies designed to isolate Russia and contain China have, paradoxically, driven the two closer together. Instead of dividing them, sanctions and tariffs have strengthened the logic of cooperation, allowing Beijing and Moscow to present a united front in opposition to Western dominance. Second, China has become an economic lifeline for Moscow. Trade with Beijing has softened the blow of Western sanctions, supplying Russia with vehicles, technology, and consumer goods that it can no longer obtain from traditional partners. This economic link not only supports Russia's resilience, but also reinforces the practical value of its strategic alignment with China. Third, the partnership is generating ripple effects across the international system. Countries like India now find themselves recalibrating in response to the shifting balance of power. At the recent SCO summit, New Delhi's cautious warmth toward both Xi and Putin illustrated how multipolar dynamics are complicating long-standing alignments. For the West, however, these developments raise alarms. US and European officials worry about scenarios where Russia might support China's ambitions in Taiwan, or China might endorse Russia's posturing in Europe. Two possibilities that heighten anxieties in Washington and Brussels. Yet even the strongest partnerships carry strains, and the future trajectory of China-Russia relations is not without friction. One source of tension lies in the asymmetry of the relationship. Russia risks sliding into the role of junior partner, serving primarily as a supplier of raw materials to fuel China's industrial engine. While Moscow has tolerated this dynamic for now, unease about becoming overdependent on Beijing may grow over time. Unfinished deals also highlight limits to the no-limits rhetoric. The failure to secure an agreement on the much-discussed Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline remains a glaring gap in their energy cooperation. Similarly, external pressures pose real challenges. Washington has already threatened secondary sanctions on Chinese firms that do business with Russia, and Beijing's willingness to absorb those risks will be an important test of the partnership's durability.
Finally, strategic divergences could complicate the unity. China remains uneasy about North Korea's increasing military brinkmanship, which Russia has tacitly encouraged as part of its regional balancing strategy. Divergent priorities in East Asia and Europe could, over time, expose cracks in the partnership. Still, despite these potential strains, the underlying logic of the relationship remains intact. As long as Washington is perceived as the primary adversary, both Beijing and Moscow have every incentive to hold fast. Strategic necessity, more than sentiment, binds them together. In this sense, irritants may surface, but they are unlikely to outweigh the shared goal of challenging Western dominance and reshaping the international order. The declaration of relations at a historic peak is more than a diplomatic flourish. It is backed by trade records, military exercises, diplomatic coordination, and shared opposition to Western dominance. This is not a formal alliance like NATO. It is a flexible, pragmatic, and resilient nexus of power. Its strength lies in adaptability, in complementing each other's weaknesses, and in presenting a united front when it matters most. As one Russian analyst remarked, "It is not about love, it is about leverage." Yet, for the West, the effect is the same, a formidable challenge to its primacy. In the long sweep of history, September 2025 may be remembered not just as a meeting in Tianjin, but as the moment when the Eurasian axis of China and Russia solidified as the central driver of a truly multipolar world.